The truth is, I can't say that my experience living in that house was supernatural. I never came to believe in such things, even though people think I, more than anyone, should have after what I lived through. I have no problem telling my story with my full name or the address of my office, whatever you need to corroborate that I'm being honest. My story begins when I rented a flat in that house as soon as I could, around the end of 1999. It was when I left college and was able to get my first formal job. I left my little flat in the Juarez neighborhood and moved to that house that had always fascinated me. In a style, perhaps eclectic, but with very beautiful architectural details. There was always something that attracted me to her, and when I had the opportunity, I didn't think twice. I lived almost a year in complete tranquility, literally. I still think there is no better place to live in Mexico City than what was that area of Rome at the end of the 90s. But suddenly, like that, without any kind of precedent, everything changed completely. I stayed up late one Tuesday, if I remember correctly, during a week with very little work. As night fell, I got up to go to the kitchen for something to eat, and a sound caught my attention. A kind of Gregorian chant, slowed down, too slow. It reminded me a lot of Kubrick's film, Eyes Wide Shut, which was recent back then, and it was so similar that the first thing I thought was that someone was watching the movie in one of the apartments with you. I approached one of the walls and the sound disappeared. I walked a little and heard it again. I went to the other wall and also at that moment it stopped hearing. When I returned to the center of the room, the sound was as clear as at the beginning. I bent down slowly to hit my ear on the floor and heard, as if in the distance, the murmur of someone who seemed to order silence. And in effect, the sound stopped. I felt strange, more than anything because I could not remove the disturbing images from my head from the film. I got up confused, and then I felt something very heavy on my back. A look. The window was open and I looked out. On the other side of the street, two silhouettes seemed to be watching me from the dark. They didn't move when I noticed them. I approached the window to run to the blinds and close it. I turned around and walked to the kitchen. As soon as I got there, I realized that the hunger had disappeared. I took just a glass of water and returned to my room. When I got to the hallway, a few meters from the door of my room, I could clearly see something inside her, and even with the lights off I distinguished it. It was one of the silhouettes that, seconds before, looked at me from the street, and if it wasn't one of them, it was practically similar. I left my apartment and went down to look for the administrator. I don't know if I wanted him to help me with the intruder or if he wanted me to see that everything that was happening was just part of my imagination. But before I got to him, I realized how I would look at myself when I said that, how ridiculous it seemed what had just happened to me. I got my act together and went back to the apartment alone. There was nothing out of the ordinary. Things started to get a little weird, others would say very weird maybe, but I repeat that everything I say is from my completely skeptical perspective of the paranormal. Arturo, my neighbor from the department next door, stopped me one of those few mornings in which we met. He told me that if he had not seen the things so peculiar that had been happening in the building and that there was a sudden change in one of the older couples in the building, a change in habit or routine, in the way they acted towards others. Strange visits they received during the night and sounds coming from their apartment days later. These sounds no longer came from their apartment but seemed to come from all that last floor. I don't know how I could have thought that I was the only one who noticed it, and it's weird when you realize that this was not due to the arrival of new inhabitants or anything like that. It was simply the change in a couple, one of the oldest in the house and the owners of his apartment. I began to sleep less and less, and these sounds kept waking me up, as if they were somehow very close to me. Silhouettes with tunics or something similar began to appear in my apartment at different times of the day, not only at night. And I don't know if it was part of a nervous crisis or simply that there were actually people entering the other people's apartments. If the intention was to scare us, they did it. Arturo moved in the weeks that these activities began, and I did it too shortly after. My limit was to start bumping into people in the corridors. Well, let's say strange people who were already walking around the place as if it were their home. The administrator left too. He, in fact, had the theory that all this was a plan to disoccupy apartments, lower prices for shopping and others. But the truth is that the couple of elders remained there for other years, until the man died relatively recently. The woman is still there, and apparently, according to what I'm told, these ceremonies, activities, meetings, pranks, whatever they are, still happen from time to time. And it's actually very easy to check if you're lucky. When you walk down that sidewalk at night, get close to the walls and listen carefully.